This is Inspiring Careers with your host, Ingrid Centurion. We're going to talk about fascinating technologies that will impact your future. Meet inspiring entrepreneurs and people that are making huge differences in the community and around the world. We're going to share career and life lessons of inspiration and success. This is Ingrid Centurion with Inspiring Careers, and today we have Carrie Pasquarello back with us, and we're going to talk about victimization and the 2 R's. Thank you once again for being back on the show with us.
Good afternoon, Ingrid. So happy to be here to help create a culture of awareness, especially as it pertains to personal safety.
I know, and tell us about some shocking, incredible stories that if you're not watching the news, you just don't hear about what's really going on there.
Right, so we have several cases that we could talk about right now, and one is the Jazzy Carrera story. She left a Boston nightclub and unfortunately got into the wrong car with a person who ended up murdering her. And once again, when we talk about our personal safety, it's really important to stress how important it is to stay in groups and let people know where you're going and having some safety strategies that you can get out of bad situations if need be.
So when she was leaving that night with the gentleman, what is the one thing she could have done that could have avoided this?
Right, well, you know, it's a tragic, tragic situation what happened to her, because you'd like to believe that the people you're meeting have good intentions, but unfortunately some don't. And one of the best strategies we talk about with our clients or any of our students that we talk with is let a friend know where you're going. Make sure that you leave a trail about who you're going with, where you're planning on going, and then you can keep in contact with your friends. And if something should go wrong, you want to be able to have some skills and strategies to get out of that situation if need be.
But that night, she probably wasn't on her cell phone. You know, so I'm thinking if I was out, and I used to do this, I would say, hey, I'm calling my mom, I'm going to let her know, where are we going? You know, just right. So the stranger knows, hey, somebody's looking after me. I just told my friends where, you know, I'm leaving with this guy. Probably all those things were not mentioned. I mean, we don't know, but I think that a small thing like that could have helped the situation.
It could have helped, and also it allows the criminal to make a choice. Is this an easy target or a difficult target? So if there's a criminal out there and he finds out he has a victim in mind, but that victim has already told other people where she's going, what time she's going to be home at, what direction they're going. That right there will make the criminal stop and think, too many people know about me. I better not commit my crime right now. And that's really the strategy, is understanding how the criminal thinks and really putting ourselves in a better position to keep ourselves safe.
I got another idea for that. Since I love taking selfies, it's like, okay, you meet this guy, let's take a selfie. And you know, you take the selfie and you might say, well, I'm going to post that on Facebook. He might think twice, because that's the last guy I left with, and if that's what he was planning, maybe he wouldn't have done that either.
That's true.
You know, there's so many things. You let people know that somebody cares
right.
about you, and somebody's looking for you
right.
immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about the flight attendant and her situational awareness and how she saved a life there.
Right, so that goes right into human trafficking. So one of amazing story that came out not too long ago was a stewardess that was on a flight from Seattle to San Francisco. And what happened was she knew the key indicators for human trafficking, and she understood that there was a gentleman with somebody. The two people together didn't make sense. One was dressed in a certain way. Another was answering all the questions, which is another key indicator for human trafficking. And the stewardess had an intuition that said, this is not right. And what she did was remarkable. She went into one of the bathrooms and she wrote a note. If you need help, write yes here. And she left a pen and a piece of paper in the bathroom. She locked that bathroom door. She went back and tried to talk to her a few more times. She wouldn't answer any of the questions. She would defer everything to the person who she was with. At one point, they got up to use the restroom. She made sure she was there to open the bathroom door for the one she thought was in trouble. She went in there, and when she left, the stewardess went back in and checked, and she wrote, help. Right there, she was able to go into help mode. She talked with the pilot. They had law enforcement waiting on the ground when they landed. They came on board, they took the two off, and they found out she was human trafficked. They saved her life. The man was arrested, and an excellent end to this story is she went on to go to college, and she's doing fantastic.
Wow. That's a
So
great story.
really important to understand those key indicators for human trafficking.
Let's talk about, explain to us what situational awareness is in your definition.
So situational awareness is a proactive approach to minimizing your risk by anticipating, identifying, and understanding the impact, the potential impact that a risk might have in your surrounding areas. So it's really important to increase your situational awareness. And oftentimes I'll talk with my clients at Global Secure Resources and they'll say, what is situational awareness? We hear about it, but we don't know what it is. And this is where we get to teach really great strategies to increase your observation skills and how to be proactive with your safety with situational awareness. And we do this with two great strategies. One's the baseline check and one's the 2 R's.
Okay. That's what we want to make sure we talk about today. So what's the first R?
Well, we'll talk about the baseline check first.
Okay, first baseline
so
check.
baseline check is it's really fantastic. So it really is a skill builder, an exercise, and anybody can increase their situational awareness by doing this. So first of all, we want to identify what a baseline is. So what we do is we'll take, for example, a coffee shop. Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, or any coffee shop in Paris, in Tokyo, or in Turkey, in Istanbul. So basically, the baseline for a coffee shop is you walk in, there's a barista, there's a couple of tables, there's people sitting down drinking, maybe on a computer, maybe on a cell phone. That's our baseline for a coffee house. Now, when you go into the coffee house, you want to try to identify anything that's above that baseline or below the baseline. So you want to see if anything is added or taken away. So excellent example of something being above the baseline is you walk into your coffee shop and you see 15 people behind the counter with the barista. That is something that you need to stop, analyze, and determine if it's a threat. So it could be that there's a training happening, right?
Right.
It could be there was just a crime that took place and the criminal put everybody behind the coffee counter. So right there, once again, you have to identify and determine if it's a threat. And always use your intuition. It could be nothing, it could be something. That's the key with finding something above the baseline. Now, something below the baseline is if you go once again into the coffee house and you see there's nobody sitting in tables and there's no barista. So right there, once again, you have to analyze, understand, and determine if it's a threat. Okay. It could be that the barista just opened the coffee house and there's no clients because of that. It could be that they've gotten sick and they're behind the counter. There could have been a robbery. Or they could just be in the back getting more caramel for the caramel macchiatos. But once again, it's your responsibility to try to identify, understand if it's a threat, and use your intuition. So anything above the baseline or below the baseline is what you're looking for.
But when you're in an environment that you've never been there before, you don't know what the baseline is.
That's right.
Okay.
So now, as you're traveling the world, you're identifying new baselines. So every time you're going into a new store, a new country, a new city, you're going to try to look around, observe, and try to figure out what the baseline is. That's the key to strengthening your situational awareness, is identifying and creating new baselines for every place you go. And it's almost a game. So every time I go out, no matter where it is, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's the dentist.
Well, your head must hurt.
No, it's a wonderful game. It's something that I do every single day, but it strengthens my situational awareness because we find too many people looking at their cell phone.
Right, they're not paying attention.
You know, they're just oblivious to what's happening. And this really brings you back down to being present in the moment and identifying and understanding if something's a threat.
All right, wonderful. So let's get into the R's.
Right.
Okay.
So
what's our first R?
So risk.
Risk. Okay.
So the 2 R's is risk and resource. And what this is, it's a scenario building. And once again, you can get really good at this as you practice. And this is excellent to teach our children, our loved ones, our daughters, our mothers, our aunts, anybody this skill. So every time you change location, you think of the 2 R's. So it's the risk and resource. Pick 3 things that could be a risk three things and pick your resources. So for instance, every time I go into the movie theater, I think 2 R's. So I look around and I say, okay, what could possibly go wrong here? And I say, okay, there could be a fire, an active shooter, or an earthquake. Really quick, I come up with
Let me tell you my R's. I think lights go out, I need a flashlight. Lights go out, right?
Perfect.
You can't see anything in there.
You can't see anything, right? So that would be your risk. Then you would automatically go and find your cell phone and know that you have a flashlight on your cell phone. So boom, it's done. And that's exactly what I do with these R's that I find. I say, okay, if there was a fire, I know where the exits are. Okay, if there's an active shooter, I'm hiding under this chair or this chair. If there's an earthquake, I'm getting myself out to safety. So right there, I created my safety backup plan. It's done, and I'm watching the movie. So this way, seconds are what can save your life in situations like that. And by creating these plans, you're a step ahead of the game in life-saving prevention methods.
Okay.
So our 2 R's and our baseline check. Those 2 things, you're all set if you start practicing these, and you really can increase your personal safety.
Okay, wonderful. Now let's get into what is human trafficking. And I know you spent some time living in Asia, and prostitution was rampant there. And that experience has formed, your opinion of human trafficking and whether prostitution should be legal or illegal. Right. And I'd really like to have some discussion about your thoughts on prostitution being legal and the ramifications of that.
Right. So spending a lot of time over in Asia and Europe, but in Asia, I was really confronted with the sex tourism, sex trafficking on a daily basis. So let's look at Bangkok, for example. We would be seeing this type of behavior every single day on the streets. A very old man with a very young girl. And it wasn't hidden, it was blatantly displayed in front of us. It was on the main streets, it was in the alleys, it was in the red light districts. And the women that were involved with this oftentimes were underage. And right there is one of our categories that anybody under 18 in the sex industry is human trafficked. So that's just our baseline for human trafficking, anybody under that age. And so you could go into buildings and they would have women lined up with number cards on their lap. And you could go in and purchase number 5, number 10, whichever number. And it was just shocking to see how open it was. And so oftentimes when I ask my clients, like, where does human trafficking happen? Most times they think it's just Asia or maybe a big city. But in reality, it's happening all around us in every single city in this world.
And you have some serious facts I want to focus on the facts. And in Boston, you have some research as far as they're searching for sex.
Yes.
What are some numbers there?
So we have over 9,000 searches on the internet for sex in Boston. 9,000. That's a lot. We have over 20,000 ads that go out. And what's amazing is we have 52 responses to each of these ads here in Boston. Once again, it's amazing to really uncover this, and it really is something that's hidden in plain sight. This is happening in all of our cities, and it is the people who are participating in this are doctors, lawyers, people with great jobs, and you wouldn't even suspect some of the people who are purchasing. But the sad fact is that the average age of a prostitute here in Massachusetts is 14, which is human trafficked by her age. So if that's the average.
They need to hear this. If the average age is 14, then you must have some 10-year-olds.
11, 12, 13.
11-year-olds.
Absolutely. Heartbreaking. They're our most vulnerable population, and they're in human trafficking, right in plain sight.
And let's talk also about the demographics. Most of them that are put into human trafficking, what are they? 90% female.
yes.
And what's the demographics?
So we have approximately over 40% are white women. We have 18% Black, 16% Asian, 13% Hispanic, and other. So it's tapping into all of our segments of population.
And what are some common misconceptions about that demographic?
So I would say our biggest misconception for human trafficked or sex trafficked victims is they can leave if they want. And that is not true, because one of the factors of being human trafficked is it's force, fraud, or coercion. And when you think about going and you're talking with a person who's been human trafficked and you ask them would they like to get out of, like, oh, they might say, no, I'm really happy where I am. But it's because of the fraud and the coercion and the force behind it. Maybe they're being beat. The coercion side is horrific, because you can have a person that you're human trafficking, and because of that, you're saying to that person, do what I'm asking you to do, or we're going to kill your family. Now, oftentimes, these women that are out there don't want to bring any harm to their family. So they have no choice but to stay. And once again, once they're arrested in this, and it's under prostitution, it's very difficult to get another job if that's part of your record.
Now, how can you spot human trafficking?
So there's really a lot of key indicators, and one of the great things is the training that's taking place, that we're trying to go in and train people at hospitals and every type of agency out there, including the airline industry, hotel industries, about these key indicators where if you see people come in and one person is not answering questions, they're looking down, they seem, your intuition is saying there's a problem here. There could be a lot of tattoos.
I think a place where they should get this training, not of course in the airlines, but at the Greyhounds and the bus stations and how they travel. You see a lot of people traveling this way.
Yes, absolutely.
There must be some indicators there.
Yes, and the great thing is everybody can participate in helping rescue a person that is human trafficked. All you have to do is, if you see any of these indicators, is you can call the National Hotline for Human Trafficking and give the tip. And with this tip, they can send out, they can make a case, and they can try to find out if they can get involved with this case and get people rescued.
What's the number?
Yes, so we have our hotline numbers, which are trafficking. National Human Trafficking Hotline number is 888-373-888. So once again, 888-373-888. And you can also use the text line, which is Be Free, which is 233733. Be Free.
That
Super simple.
Okay, that's nice.
And I will tell you about an incident that just happened this past month, where I had clients that had I had done all their individual threat assessment plans for the family, for study abroad, for their company that they have, and for the mother that did some travel over in Europe. And they contacted me saying that their daughter was contacted on Instagram. And this is a really great way that traffickers get involved with people's lives, is they find them on the internet. So they sent out a message to this girl saying that we will pay you a certain amount of money if you come to this location for a photo shoot. And she knew something was suspicious, and because we had talked to her about personal safety and personal protection, she ended up telling this person she was going to forward this information to her agent, which happened to be her mother. Her mother contacted me, and we ended up finding out that the person's company that he said he was with didn't exist. The location for the photo shoot was in a terrible part of town in a deserted area, and what I told her to do was call the hotline, give them this tip. And they were so grateful when she called because of these key indicators within this message that he sent. He had a price that he was willing to give her. Simple work, a couple hours a day of work, and she could get a lot of money. Right there is key indicators. Nobody that's actually looking to have a photo shoot would ever offer money, first of all, without seeing the person, understand their work ethic, etc. Right? So right here, this was probably somebody trying to get her involved. And we don't know what could have happened had she gone. But I know this was a serious situation and we needed to pull some other people in just to identify it.
So she's an up-and-coming model. He found her on her Instagram account. There's models out there, girls that are posting photos of themselves.
Right.
This is really important information. I have a question on the Instagram thing, though. So I thought it was just photos. Now he's sending her a message on Instagram?
Yes. So he was able to find her email address and emailed her a message saying that he found her on Instagram.
Okay.
And this was the connection. So think of this. Our most vulnerable population are the ones that are being human trafficked. So had she not had previous exposure to personal safety, a good family life that protected her, and she, let's say she was poor and really needed that money to make her rents, right? She might have picked that photo shoot, and we don't know what would have happened. And that's the key, is the human traffickers, these people, these criminals, are pulling in people that are the most vulnerable, that need money, that need something. And that's what's terrible.
So we talked about the demographics, how you can spot it, and who are the traffickers?
Traffickers. This is one of the saddest elements to the human trafficking group. They could be mothers, they could be fathers, they could be people who are community members. And then, of course, we have our criminal element, right? So if you look at some of the cases that we've had that have been a mother that human trafficked her daughter, this is horrific. And this is really important, why we need to really get this message out so people can understand what number to call, the text number, and be able to share this vital information with people so that we can identify those that are most vulnerable and protect them and get them out of the industry and get some help.
In knowing that now, explain to me the grooming and the key indicators. Some of the young women are being groomed into this profession. What do we need to look for?
And a perfect example is the Lacey Project. So there was a girl, her name was Emma, and she moved to Hartford, Connecticut as a young girl, and she ended up getting a boyfriend and started lying about where she was going. She was just a normal kid in a normal neighborhood. And what happened was, the human traffickers, the way they work is they identify who they want as their victim. And they get to know that person, and they shower them with gifts, and they make them think that they love them. And then they can bring them right into either doing drugs and try to get them to do things. And if this is a human trafficker that's into violence, into the force side, then what happens is they could just be beat and forced to do this work.
And now there's just fear.
And this was what happened to Lacey. That was her name by her trafficker.
Okay.
But Emma, she was able to get out of the industry, and she started this wonderful nonprofit called the Lacey's Project. And I highly suggest anybody to go online, find this project, and listen to her story, because it's a remarkable story, and we're so grateful that she was able to break free and help others. Because that's the key, is really—
How do you spell Lacey?
L-A-C-E-Y.
Okay, so Lacey.com.
Yes,
Okay.
Lacey's Project.
Lacey's Project,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, so that's really an amazing story right there.
For the parents out there, tips. We talked about a few tips. We talked about some hotlines. I wanted to make sure that we talk about any other tips. What are the tips to protect your children from this?
Right. Once again, looking at the force, fraud, and coercion, we need to talk to our children about that coercion part, right? It's the grooming techniques that these criminals will use. And the best way to talk to our children is about giving them resources that they can share with their friends that might be in trouble. Because sometimes if we're telling our child, oh, you have to look out for human traffickers, it might go in one ear, out the other. But if you tell them you have some really good, important safety tips for them to share with their friends in case they need help, they are more likely to listen. And so I think once you teach them about these strategies to help their friends, you can tell them about the text line, Be Free, that they can text any type of hotline tips to this number. You can also talk about online safety. Really key, because a lot of these people are getting our most vulnerable from the internet. They're asking our children to do things that they know they'll be able to blackmail them later. And that's the key. We want to make sure that our parents are looking at the cell phones of their students, of their children, right? Make sure that it's an open conversation with your child about their cell phone, and that it's important for us to know what our kids are doing, who they're hanging out with, and that they always have a safe place at home to talk with us about anything. And some other ideas, let's see, always teach them situational awareness, practice the 2 R's, and learn self-defense. So
we talked about that last time.
We did talk about that last time. And I think one of the other women that we talked about when we were talking about situational awareness is Vanessa Marcotte. And she was the jogger who was unfortunately murdered in Princeton. And that whole case brought forth a foundation in her name to empower people. And I just went to a program that they held. It was called Strike for Vanessa, which was an amazing program. And we had the most amazing self-defense instructor at this program. And her name is Adele Zeisler. And she is remarkable. And really, I think that's the key, is teaching our kids empowerment through self-defense, through the strategies, and knowing where to reach out if we need to reach out.
You also brought with us your Blue campaign here.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the Blue campaign.
So the Blue campaign is by Homeland Security, and this is an excellent resource that any family should really go to. They have awesome videos that you can learn so much more about the stories of victims and how to spot human trafficking, key indicators. And it's a very helpful website. Really great stuff to get our kids involved with.
Okay.
Yes.
And so really, thank you so much for coming back. We're almost up on our time. You shared some strategies, some tips, some shocking stories. I really think the number one thing is communication. Parents need to communicate with their children. And everybody's so busy working today, they're not talking to their children and telling that these things really do go on right here.
Yes.
It's not like it's far, far, far away.
That's so true. It's just around the corner in many
So
cases.
what are we going to talk about next time?
Oh, we have so many different things
That's right.
to talk about, right? But it will always circle around personal safety and how it's our responsibility to be safe. And we are the ones that can create our path to the future in a really bright, straight way.
Thank you so much. Like we said, we'll have series of these. We'll have them all out there for parents and families and schools and young men and young women all around the United States and everywhere as you travel abroad. So
Yes.
thank you so much for being on the show again.
Oh, my pleasure. Teach, Reach, and Empower. Thank
right.
you.
Mm-hmm.